A sweet elderly couple found brutally murdered inside their home, and they are still looking for the answers. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Bill and Peggy Stephenson. Viewer discretion. Real quick before we get started, hello, my name is Mike. If you are new to the channel, I tell many a true crime story here on YouTube, so please subscribe if you are into that kind of thing. I also tell short form true crime stories over on TikTok. I have a couple of different pages, so please feel free to check those pages out if you want to. The links to those pages are in the link tree in the description of this video below. The links to them will also pop up here at some point in the beginning and towards the end of the video. Also, in the link tree below, you will find my merch store. We sell like t-shirts and hoodies and stuff like that. Nothing super fancy. We do ship all over the world, so if you want to check that out, go ahead and yeah, do it if you want. It is what it is, bro. And then lastly, if there is a case you want me to cover, just send me a super duper quick email. My email is also listed below. All I need to know is the name of the case or the individual, where it happened, when it happened. I'll add it to the list. Once I add it to the list, I choose my cases at random whenever I do a story. So I can't promise you when I'll cover that particular case, but I will get to it eventually, either here on YouTube or on TikTok. But at any rate, let's get into today's case. William Lee Stevenson, who would go by Bill to everybody, was born on July 31st, 1936, and he was high school sweethearts with Peggy Ann Parker. They would date, and then eventually they would get married. Peggy was born on September 22nd in 1936, and they lived their lives in Florence, Kentucky. They would also go on to have 3 wonderful children together. Bill Stevenson was incredibly outgoing. He was he was fun, he was funny, he was a sweet guy. He was very devoted. He and Peggy were both very devoted to their church. They attended Union Baptist Church. Peggy described as a really just gentle, kind of quiet and sweet lady. She also played the organ and the piano. She played the organ at the church. Bill had founded a company called Truckers Chapel. I guess it's like, essentially he did this for truckers, where it was like this trailer off of Highway 75 that whenever truckers passed by, and if they were like, religious, they could attend a service at this sort of makeshift chapel. Bill and Peggy were fantastic parents. They raised their kids really well. Their kids absolutely adored them. The community adored them. I mean, they were just a well-known and very well-respected couple in this community in Florence, Kentucky. They were friendly with every single person they met. It was said that they never met a stranger because they just immediately kind of knew the person. Even if they never met him before, they kind of just immediately became friends with them. Bill at one point was a deacon at the church while Peggy played the organ there. It sounds like you just couldn't meet a nicer couple, really. And they didn't have any enemies. Like, nobody hated these people. I mean, these were really good people. They lived in a really nice neighborhood. And so for what happened to them is so unbelievably tragic, but also just so bizarre and confusing. It was May 29th, 2011. One of Bill and Peggy's daughters, Beth, she hadn't seen or heard from her parents. Bill and Peggy had failed to show up for that previous Sunday service at the church, and that's obviously not like them. They were devout. They went every single Sunday without question. The exception is that sometimes Peggy wouldn't go because she was battling fibromyalgia, but she still tried to go every Sunday. But Bill, always there, always. Bill didn't show up at the Truckers Chapel that Sunday, and because he would conduct the Sunday services for the Truckers Chapel. And again, I mean, this was his pride and joy. This was his bread and butter. This was everything. And for him not to show up to that either, is very concerning and alarming. So on May 29th, 2011, Beth, her husband, would go to Bill and Peggy's condo. This was he got there sometime at approximately 1 p.m. that day. When he walked into their condo, he saw something that no one would ever expect to see. It was pure brutality, from what detectives have eventually described it as. The detectives would call this a very different, unique, and absolutely disturbing crime scene. This is because Beth's husband walked into Bill and Peggy Stephenson dead in their home. They had both been just beaten and stabbed, and there was blood everywhere. But the thing is that detectives, once they arrive and they're investigating this, they have kept the details of the brutality very close to their chests. They have not released exactly what they saw in that house. And so there is an element to this that is still a mystery. And they're doing that because they want to make sure that when they have the killer, they know it's the killer, because they may slip up and say something about the crime scene that police and the media haven't released to anyone. What police have said, though, over the years is that the killer spent at least 3 hours, possibly up to 8 hours in that house after he, she, or maybe multiple people murdered this elderly couple. The crime scene was staged. Every room of the house was staged in some way, shape, or form, according to detectives. In what way, I don't know. They did also release that one of the two victims had received a post-mortem injury several hours after they were already dead. So whoever did this came back to one of the bodies and did more things to them. The only thing they've said to the public is that Bill and Peggy Stephenson were killed sometime between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. However, police actually know the precise time of death, like to the minute, because one of them had a medical device on their body that had like a timer on it, or a clock, and it stopped at this person's time of death. The detectives described the scene as this, quote, "I've seen some pretty gruesome things, but I've never seen a crime scene like that. It was staged in almost every way that you could possibly think. I don't want to elaborate too much, but things were moved and turned over. Things had been touched on bookshelves and in cabinets, and things had been rearranged on the refrigerator. And then with the victims, things had been laid around them and on top of them. We didn't have a crime scene. We had a scene the killer or killers wanted us to find." End quote. It just appears to be not like it sounds to me like almost ritualistic, not in like a devil worshipping kind of way. It just sounds very deliberate, I guess. There's something about it that the way they set this whole crime scene up, the killer, the killers, it was something almost as if they were trying to leave some kind of elaborate clue, it sounds like. There was also no signs of forced entry into the home. No kicked-in doors, no broken windows, no screens had been slashed, nothing of the sort. And so they believe that Bill and Peggy likely knew their killers, or trusted their killers at least. They also have to buzz in people to this neighborhood, and so it's believed that Bill and Peggy had to have buzzed this person in, or persons. It's possible that maybe the killers or killer knew Bill and Peggy by reputation, and maybe they didn't know them personally, but maybe they approached the house in some way, shape, or form, and using their generosity, their kindness, their love for humanity, maybe the killers used that against them and somehow coaxed their way into the house, even if they were strangers, perhaps. But they didn't force their way into the home, not in any traditional sense. Because Bill had that trucking service chapel, police kind of looked at that as a potential reason for whoever this person was, as in, like, he met many, many truck drivers. And these are truck drivers from many, many different states throughout the country. And eventually investigators had to track down several different truck drivers. They went to dozens of different states to interview truck drivers who came through the area, who had attended this truck chapel. They spoke to them. They also got DNA from the majority of these truck drivers. So they do have DNA at the crime scene that isn't Bill or Peggy's, and they're hoping they can find the person so they can match the DNA to them. So the truck driver angle has been a big thing that they have been looking into, but so far they have not matched DNA to any of them, and they have not been able to get a suspect from any of them. There was also another suspect, and this was somebody close to the family. Bill and Peggy's nephew, a man named Charles Stevenson, who would go by Steve or Stevie, he was considered a suspect for a brief moment of time. This is because a year after Bill and Peggy's brutal murder, Stevie killed another woman. He killed a 67-year-old woman in Indiana. He had murdered a woman named Lee Jennings. He killed her with a skillet and a pepper grinder. Eventually, Stevie was caught for this crime, and he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole. They did go to him, they collected his DNA. His DNA was not a match to the DNA left behind at the crime scene, and they have since ruled him out of this murder. In a kind of bizarre twist, there was a possible connection to the infamous Delphi murders, or as some people refer to them as the Down the Hill killer. Abigail Williams and Liberty German had been murdered in 2017. They are also kind of referred to as the Snapchat killer because one of the girls caught their killer, potential killer, on a Snapchat video on the bridge. I'm sure most of you know about this case. This was a very well-known case where they have only just recently arrested and began to prosecute a man named Richard Allen for their murders. He was arrested back in October of 2022. So police in Kentucky received a tip that said there is a possible connection to those murders to the Bill and Peggy Stephenson murders, which seems very random because what? You have two teenage girls and you have two elderly people. It seems very bizarre as a connection, but allegedly there was one. What that connection is, though, has not been released to the public. Like a lot of things in this case, there has been very little released for public knowledge. But they have said, what they have confirmed is that this alleged link to the Delphi murders was not connected to Richard Allen, who is the alleged killer of the two girls. So again, what that link is, I'm not sure. The man who came to police with this tip is said by detectives to not be a suspect either, but they have said that there is a specific item that is their main focus and an item that was linked to the Delphi murders. And so detectives have said, quote, "I'm not going to tell you about what that item was. We've recently been in the northern part of Indiana investigating this guy, following him around, looking for things, collecting all of the information and evidence that we would need to at least vet him as a possible or best case scenario suspect. He was cooperative. We were able to go down that path with him. He articulated good reason to why that particular item may have existed." End quote. So again, it's kind of just more mystery. Bill and Peggy Stephenson were only 3 months away from their 55th wedding anniversary. This was such a beautiful, happy, and just such a loving couple. I mean, to say it's shocked the community is an understatement, considering they haven't released a motive. Why did this happen to this couple? Like, what led to this scenario happening? It's just so disturbing that someone would do this kind of brutality to this older couple. I don't know, it's strange. The family believes that they've likely interacted with the killer of Bill and Peggy Stephenson, that they've spoken to this individual or possible individuals, that it's someone that Bill and Peggy knew that let them in the house, which means that the family might know them. They may have attended the funeral. They may have given their condolences to the family. I mean, that's the kind of the paranoia you have to kind of think now. And now their kids and the rest of their family are scared. Like, are they going to come after any of them now? Was this something related to the family itself? When it comes to the DNA, I know people are going to ask, like, have they plugged it into DNA genealogy, that kind of thing. The same thing that caught the Golden State Killer. And one of the detectives was asked this question, and the detective responded with, quote, "The DNA is not currently suitable for genealogy or phenotyping at this time. We hope in the future that changes," end quote. But so basically, no, it doesn't sound like they've been able to do that. That there may be a mix of blood types within this DNA sample that they have, or samples, I don't know. Another piece of information detectives released is that they have said that they believe that the killer or killers went to that house with the full intent of murdering both people, that both of them had to die. Both of these victims were 74 years old. They were frail. Peggy had, like I said earlier, fibromyalgia. She didn't move around so well. And so the detective said it was extremely easy. There was plenty of opportunity to attack their one intended target without having to do anything to the other one, and the other one not even seeing this occur. That's why detectives believe that both victims were the intended targets, that they came there to kill this couple. While they haven't revealed everything in terms of like what was stolen, they have said what hasn't been stolen. They have said that the easily noticeable, the easy to fence products in the house that you could sell, they were not touched. Another thing they said is that part of the staging, and they haven't released all the details of the staging, but one thing they have released is that there are photos in the house, like family photos. Some of them were arranged. I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing meaning that some of these photos were either flipped upside down or turned around or defaced or something to some of the photos was done that would indicate that the killer or killers didn't like particular members of the family. And because other photos were not touched or not flipped over or whatever the case may be, but some photos were. Who those people were, I don't know, in terms of what photos were, defaced or turned over. So in the end, we have a case that's full of mystery with not a ton of information released. You have this elderly couple brutally slain inside their home, this unassuming, quiet, peaceful, sweet couple in this really nice neighborhood, absolutely attacked in such vicious ways inside their home. And we don't know who, and they don't know why. And unfortunately, that's kind of the end because of the lack of info they have out there. They haven't listed any known suspects. They haven't publicized any names. They haven't really, like I said, they've kept most of this very close to them. And that is definitely an investigative tool because, like I said earlier, if they're interviewing someone, a possible person of interest or whatever the case may be, that person may accidentally say something that they shouldn't know unless they were the killer. So if you're wondering why there's little information released, that's the main reason why. They want to know that they have the right person. These are detectives who want to know it. We've had cases in the past where detectives will release everything to the public. They'll say everything. And so if someone says something in an interview, they could have easily heard it on the news or read it in a newspaper or heard through word of mouth. It sounds like even the family doesn't know these details. And so there is no chance of anyone slipping and saying something to the public. The best way to catch these killers, obviously, is with DNA. That's the most foolproof way. You could get a confession, but as we know in the past, those can be coerced. The other best way is for the killer or killers to slip up and to say something that they absolutely should have no way of knowing unless they did it. So hopefully one day that happens. But until that day comes, this case is still unsolved. This has happened in 2011. It's 2024 now. We're well over a decade. They don't want to say that this is a cold case. They're saying they are still very much actively working this case. They still need help. They need the public's help. They need your help. If you know anything, you need to come forward. Somebody somewhere out there knows the truth. Perhaps that someone is you. There is a reward for any information that helps lead to the capture of these killers. At one point it was $50,000, but I think now it's up to around $100,000. So if you need money to convince you to tell the truth and catch these killers, which it should cost $0 for that information, but if you need it and you know the info, come forward. You don't have to say who you are. You can report your information anonymously. You just have to tell them what you know, and that's it. This is still a very new case in terms of, at least cases that I've covered before where talked about cases from the 60s and the 70s where the killers are either there's a chance they're dead or they're very, very old. This is a situation where these killers are still very much likely, hopefully, alive and are still there's still plenty of time for them to serve a long time in a prison cell. And they may be a danger to people, right? They've already murdered 2 elderly people. Who knows? They may have killed more people and they just haven't linked it yet. If you know something, you can't just let these people be out there. I mean, think of the other people that could be killed by these people. Think of the family. They're scared. They don't know if they're going to come after them. So if you have information about the murder of Bill and Peggy Stephenson, please call 859-334-8496 or 844-210-1111. You can help end this if you know information. You can stop these monsters or monster. Please help Bill and Peggy Stephenson get the justice they rightfully deserve. But that is it for this case, True Crime, a Rooney Dooney Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. Please give this video a like because it gets pushed out to more people, and you never know that one person might see this video or any video about this case. Give those videos a like so that more people can see those other videos if they're out there. It just takes that one person to see the right thing and come forward and give this family the answers they deserve. So give the video a like, subscribe if you like true crime, follow me over on TikTok, check out the merch store if you want to, ship all over the world, recommend a case to my email address. And that is it for this case, True Crime, a Rooney Dooney Dingleberry Dong. That's it for this video. So, is advised.